In the cutthroat movie business, it's all about the dollars and cents. Critics loved these movies, but that didn't matter. They crashed and burned their way straight into box office hell. 2016 Suicide Squad scored horrible reviews that marked some of the worst critical reactions to any 2010s superhero movie. 5 years later, its quasi-sequel/reboot, The Suicide Squad, emerged from the weird mind of writer and director James Gunn.
Yo, is this a dog?
What?
Is this thing a dog?
Critics loved this one, praising gloriously dark humor scattered throughout the R-rated feature. The bright color palette's contrast with all the gory carnage in the movie made for a surprisingly good time for audiences and critics alike, and it landed a fresh 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. Unfortunately, all that acclaim didn't translate to box office receipts. The original Suicide Squad was a critical dud that still exceeded $300 million in North America alone. The Suicide Squad, meanwhile, grossed just $168.71 million worldwide on a $185 million budget, including just $55.8 million in North America. Simultaneously debuting on HBO Max in North America didn't do the Suicide Squad any favors, but its diminished international numbers, where it was a theatrical exclusive, made it clear that larger problems were afoot. Disdain for the original Suicide Squad and confusion over this project's status as either a sequel or a reboot were just some of the elements that held the Suicide Squad back financially. All those glowing reviews were a welcome surprise, but they weren't enough to save this band of DC villains from a gruesome box office death.
We're all gonna die.
I hope so.
Oh, for sake.
Since The Dark Knight debuted in 2008, every Christopher Nolan directorial effort has grossed at least $500 million worldwide, with one glaring exception. 2020's Tenet topped out at $366.27 million worldwide and just $59.4 million domestically. Chalk these drastically lower numbers up to the film opening in September 2020. Since Los Angeles and New York City theaters were still closed and a COVID vaccine was still months away, Tenet's potential North American audience was incredibly limited compared to, say, Interstellar's in November 2014. On a $200 million budget, Tenet would have had to clear an estimated $500 million just to break even, once you include stuff like marketing costs, distribution, and theater shares. This result was understandable, at least due to external COVID factors. But what made this box office fate bittersweet was that Tenet was well received by critics. It had its detractors like all Nolan films, but the ambitious and visually imaginative approach to time travel action movies led to a decent 70% on Rotten Tomatoes when all was said and done. The film's distinctive imagery was especially praised, while performances from the likes of Robert Pattinson and Elizabeth Debicki were raved about across the board. In another timeline, those positive Tenet reviews would have been paired with a lucrative box office run reminiscent of all other modern Nolan features. In this one, however, it just wasn't in the cards.
But can we change things if we do it differently? What's happened's happened.
For well over a decade, the Michael Bay Transformers movies shattered box office records despite scoring some of the worst reviews ever for big American blockbusters. The various sequels were demolished by critics, with Revenge of the Fallen and The Last Knight securing especially brutal reviews.
I am directly below. The enemy scrotum.
But even those movies transformed into box office juggernauts and earned over $800 million worldwide like it was no problem. 2024's Transformers 1 went in the opposite direction in every respect. That is, everybody loved it and it absolutely tanked. The genuine heart and character-centric focus of the script offered some of the best moments of the franchise, while Brian Tyree Henry scored universal acclaim for his young version of Megatron. Transformers 1 mopped the floor with most of its live-action predecessors in raw critical reception, resulting in an 87% Rotten Tomatoes critic score.
I loved it!
You did?
How could anyone not love it?
In terms of box office gross though, Transformers 1 left a lot to be desired, even on a slimmed-down $75 million budget. In its worldwide box office run, Transformers 1 only grossed $128.3 million, including a dismal $69.2 million overseas. No matter how good the reviews were, moviegoers just weren't interested in checking out the origin story for Optimus Prime and Megatron. Intense competition from the wild robot and steadily increasing audience resentment towards the Transformers brand helped seal Transformers 1's box office fate, despite its positive critical reception.
I'm glad you were there with me to get punched in the face. That was fun.
There was probably never a way to make Better Man, a biopic about the life of British musician Robbie Williams, a huge box office hit. Though he was a sensation around the globe, he's a virtual unknown in America, which already cut off one of the biggest movie-going markets. Plus, Better Man opted to present Williams as a CG chimpanzee, an artistic choice that likely alienated longtime fans curious to actually see the singer star in a feature film. Better Man couldn't even hit $2 million at the domestic box office, and its worldwide haul ended up being just under $18 million, an appalling number for something that cost $110 million to make thanks to the expensive digital trickery used to render primate Robbie Williams.
Right. Straight up. There's no appetite, want, or need for boy bands. They died a death.
Its box office fate may have been inevitable, but it's a shame since Better Man is really good. With a fresh 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, Better Man soared thanks to its willingness to be so raw about the demons that plagued Williams, not to mention the unforgettably stylized imagery used to realize the pop star's inner turmoil. Plus, the musical numbers are executed with real imagination. It's a shame audiences worldwide gave Better Man the coldest of cold shoulders because its gonzo brilliance excels on the big screen. Back in 2000, Gladiator became one of Ridley Scott's biggest movies. Teaming up with Matt Damon for 2015's The Martian produced another one of Scott's most lucrative features. Unfortunately, combining those things, Matt Damon and a historical epic for 2021's The Last Duel couldn't capture anywhere close to the same box office magic. On a $100 million budget, this costly feature barely cracked $30 million worldwide and did especially terrible business in the US, where it only grossed $10.8 million. That made it one of Scott's lowest grossing movies ever. With some pretty bleak subject matter and a crowded October 2021 theatrical landscape, audiences just weren't interested. That's a pity though. Regarded as one of Scott's better post-2000 movies, The Last Duel's glowing reviews scored it an 85% critics rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Told with a sweeping scope and a fascinating narrative structure divided up into thirds, The Last Duel is a gripping tale of corrupt men and women just trying to exist under horrific conditions. Critics praise Scott's visual eye, as well as the fully committed slimeball performances from the likes of Ben Affleck and Adam Driver.
The common mind has no capacity for this sort of nuance.
Timothée Chalamet hasn't just cultivated his movie star reputation with major studio fare like Dune and Wonka. He's also taken on more challenging works like Bones and All. In this 2022 movie about two young cannibals navigating America in the late 80s, Chalamet definitely plays a supporting role to the film's headliner, Taylor Russell. Combining richly human performances with fairly grotesque depictions of cannibalism, in short, Bones and All scored some rave reviews. Critics were especially fond of Russell's work as well, resulting in an 82% Rotten Tomatoes critics rating. Despite strong reviews and Chalamet's star power, Bones and All catered at the box office when it hit theaters over Thanksgiving 2022. The worldwide gross only totaled $15.2 million, despite a budget reportedly in the $20 million range. Perhaps the graphic subject matter alienated the rising star's die-hard fanbase, or maybe audiences just weren't in the mood for something so bleak in 2022's final months. Whatever the reason, it clearly hasn't derailed Chalamet's movie star momentum in the years that have followed. There's a good chance that every movie by The Lonely Island is destined to bomb before thriving in the long term. In 2007, Hot Rod hit theaters, and audiences gave it a shrug, only for the movie to gain new life on home video. 9 years later, it happened again. Popstar Never Stopped Stopping completely tanked when it opened in early June 2016.
Usually I don't like to read reviews, but I'm just excited. Like, I can't wait.
The $20 million comedy brought in a mere $9 million worldwide. But despite that, strong reviews and a growing cult following have kept Popstar popping. From the catchy and cleverly written songs to the way it delivered a comedic music mockumentary that didn't just feel like this is a Spinal Tap retread. It had a lot for critics to rave about. Even though the box office receipts weren't there, the movie never stopped, never stopping. Popstar's outstanding reviews and 79% on Rotten Tomatoes paved the way for the legendary cult status it enjoys today. It's Hot Rod all over again. Widow should have been the start of an exciting new era of mainstream Steve McQueen movies, co-written with Gillian Flynn. Widow saw McQueen applying his filmmaking skills to a tense crime thriller with enough propulsion, pacing, and captivating filmmaking to make Michael Mann proud. Plus, McQueen assembled an ensemble cast rich with dynamite performances, particularly from Daniel Kaluuya and Elizabeth Debicki. Widows was masterful cinema that critics greeted with the same kind of glowing reviews that McQueen's previous films received, resulting in a 91% score on Rotten Tomatoes. except Widows flopped at the box office, bringing in a tragically low $75.98 million worldwide on a $40 million budget. Competition from other adult dramas like Bohemian Rhapsody in November 2018 also limited the box office potential of Widows, and a generic stuffy marketing campaign didn't help matters either. Widows should have been a crowd-pleasing box office triumph. It wasn't, but it's still a great film that continues to gain fans years after its underwhelming box office run wrapped up. 3 years before director John M. Chu found massive box office success with Wicked, he landed on a dud with In the Heights. The movie finally debuted in theaters after a 12-month delay caused by COVID-19 and had no problem winning over the critics, who praised Chu's approach to realizing musical numbers and vividly colorful renderings of ordinary locales. Combined with striking performances from its stars, In the Heights landed with a respectable 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. But those jubilant responses weren't enough to turn the relatively obscure stage musical into a big screen phenomenon. Worldwide, In the Heights only grossed $45.7 million on a $55 million budget. That was a pretty devastating return, particularly in the US. Plus, Heights premiered in June 2021, when theaters were beginning to reopen. It was a challenging time to launch any new movie, let alone a musical. The Thing is considered by some to be the best sci-fi horror movie of all time, and the critical reception to The Thing was uniformly positive too, with 85% on Rotten Tomatoes and tons of praise for the way director John Carpenter squeezes so much tension out of minimal locations and characters. But the initial audience response was a lot chillier, causing the film to absolutely bomb at the box office when it hit theaters in 1982. It also came out just 2 weeks after E.T., and it doesn't take a genius to figure out which movie parents took their kids to. Really, there are endless reasons why The Thing flopped at the box office, including the fact that its grisly take on human beings destroying each other just wasn't what audiences wanted at the time. There was also a lot of discussion back in 1982 about the film being excessively gory and grotesque, which ultimately repelled many people who might have otherwise given it a shot. All that gore and mayhem came with a price tag of $15 million, but when the dust had settled, it only brought back about $20.8 million worldwide. Today, The Iron Giant is considered one of the best American animated movies ever made, a triumph of storytelling and one of director Brad Bird's greatest accomplishments.
What you currently have in your mouth is art!
But when it came out, The Iron Giant was a box office bomb. Despite glowing reviews that eventually led to a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes, Warner Brothers just didn't know how to market the film in 1999. Plus, the 90s were harsh to non-Disney animated films that weren't either Nickelodeon show adaptations or DreamWorks releases, costing $50 million to make. The Iron Giant only grossed $31.7 million worldwide. In sharp contrast to later Bird crowd pleasers like The Incredibles and Ratatouille, The Iron Giant lost millions. Since then, the film has endured as an underdog cult classic. The very same qualities that made it a marketing nightmare in 1999 make it stand out in the history of American animated cinema. If anything reflects how box office numbers aren't the end of a movie's journey, it's The Iron Giant.